very skilled group of panelists. But there are a couple of questions that we thought we'd pose to them. And I'd like to start with Makeda. Makeda being very knowledgeable about our food deserts. You're sitting in a food desert. And yes, for us, it's right down the street. Anyway, Makeda, tell us a little bit, what do you think the city's doing to improve the quality and quantity of food in the New Orleans area? And specifically, tell us a little bit about what Sankofa's doing in that way.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Is this better? You can hear me. Okay. The food deserts in New Orleans, I was actually talking on the ride over here. I heard that there were 3 main markets that people used to like to go to pre-Katrina, or maybe even before that. There was, this used to be Venus Gardens, you had Schwagnan's, and you had, the Circle Food Store over there on St. Bernard and Claiborne. And so I definitely know that the Circle Food Store plans to reopen this summer. It hasn't been open since Katrina. They're just now getting their funds more available. So they're slowly trying to do things like that as far as rebuilding grocery stores in the area and opening farmers markets. What Sankofa does is we have a few gardens set up in the area. We have them behind Frederick Douglass High School, or Kid Renaissance High School, St. Claude Court, and Independence Street in the lower and upper Ninth Ward areas. And so other nonprofit organizations like that, as well as Sankofa, work to provide fresh fruits and vegetables and produce and your bay leaves and your basil and your thyme and all your herbs as well, so you can really make wholesome and healthy meals for yourself. And so I definitely know the city is working to increase the access to food health, to food in that area.
A neighborhood that I did not grow up in, and to learn about the concentration of urban farming right here in Central City. Central City is a really large neighborhood, and so back in 2009, Gris Gris Lab started a food justice course that allowed urban ag enthusiasts to come into the city, but to learn about the cultural aspects of New Orleans' very rich agricultural history. So the idea was urban ag isn't something new, composting and green living wasn't something new, that it was something that was a part of our heritage right here in this community. And so the goal was to really match those people with elders who knew the land and had been growing for many generations. So I was actually really impressed with the concentration of right on the road, right down the street, Pam Broom on O.C. Haley, who understood the land, really understood our heritage. And so it was about bridging those gaps between people who were coming here from somewhere else with particular knowledge or understanding and the unique sort of cultural understanding of the land right here in this neighborhood. So I wanted to really just say that that was something that was inspirational for me.
Well, since I'm the elder of the group, I can remember the very first garden on the Castle Hill, which was at the neighborhood gallery right down the street. We did that garden, which is still there now. I've seen it's a little neglected, but the neighborhood gallery started that garden, and we named it the Quadra Garden. Each bed was one of the Indusa size. It's been around before they came, okay?
Okay, thank you. Gia, one of the things that came up in the film, and I love this line, one of our sons, and his mother's right back there, said this line, stay out of my plate. And any of us who are on a journey to healthier eating, as we get excited about it, we have a tendency to want to share it. So, Gia, get out of my plate. You grew up eating this food, and now you want to tell me what to do. How do we shift opinions? How do we share health and wealth without being offensive?
Well, Mama Jamilah and I have actually worked together, Sisters Making a Change, which was some of our introduction of healthy food and healthy lifestyle to women in the community. But more personally, my own father and I have gone through sort of a 10-year journey of growing up and becoming vegetarian in college and coming back and deciding to raise my children vegetarian and now sort of, and my father just sort of saying, why? This doesn't make any sense. You're healthy and you're fine. What I have found is that simply living the diet and actually being healthy yourself goes without any words. And by preparing and serving food and serving things to your elders, for me was a great connection from my father. So he knew that when we would get together to eat that I was going to prepare that and I was going to serve it to him. And that was out of respect, and that I would, politely decline certain things, but that, it was more about the ritual of us eating together. And very, very slowly, over 10 years, my father gave up pork, he gave up beef. He now asks for those salads. So if I don't have them, he sort of questions, well, where's my salad? I'm over at the house. And he's a lot more willing to try new things. So what I found is, us not imposing it as a sort of judgmental perspective, but from a loving perspective of sharing. And that's something that is in keeping with our tradition as African people, of sharing our food and sharing our love. And I think one of the people in the film said, soul food comes from the soul and from the heart. So, it's about us sharing.
Amina, okay, any thoughts on that?
I could definitely agree with the judgmental piece that she brought up. It's just like you share information about where's a good doctor to go to, what's a good movie to see, what's a good CD to go buy. So having a conversation about what's a good food to eat, or where can I buy the best broccoli or the best cauliflower, shouldn't have to be a conversation that we're scared to have with each other, because it's about building a healthy community and bringing everyone together. And we all need to be healthy to be able to function, to be able to, thrive and build the communities that we want to see. And so eating right is something that we simply just have to do to achieve that. So I don't think it should be a bad thing to talk about.
And one more question. Amina, you are the sole vegetarian chef. You're probably one of the first people that I ate vegetarian food from the family I loved. So tell us a little bit. And, here in New Orleans, dressed and undressed. How do you redress food to bring about the soul to the vegetarian?
Okay. When you ask me questions, I would answer that. I have studied that and tried that and messed up and cooked bad food so bad I wouldn't even give it to my dog, because I love my dog. So it's a matter of trial and error. I look at recipes and cooking like I look at math. I always liked math in school. So I figured if you learn how to do fractions, decimals, percentages, and you know the end result that you want, and therefore the products that you bring to that recipe bound to give you the end result. The first thing I learned when I decided that I wanted to come back to New Orleans from San Diego and open up a vegetarian restaurant was I had to learn my spices. And I learned every spice I could find. I tried to taste it. I found out what cultures used it, why they used it, how long, where it came from, where there's a root, a bark, stem, what it was, how it was made, what was best, how long to keep it, what can I use to substitute if I didn't have it, which most of the time, which makes you very, very creative. Especially in Louisiana and New Orleans cuisine, we are the spice kings, I think. And if everybody loves history, and wars were fought over spices. Let's look at it. Spices have been around a long time, a serious long time. I remember reading every cookbook I could possibly get my hands on, and when you're talking about soul food being food for the soul and the heart, the best book I ever read is called Vibration Cooking, and I adapted that 30 years ago as a vibrate cooker, which means that I do not cook when I'm angry, I'm upset, because I truly believe that my vibrations go in my food. And I think that might be one of the main ingredients of soul food that we have overlooked. I personally have only cooked one time deliberately made food at my restaurant back in the day Because an old girlfriend, not an old girlfriend, an old person I knew from high school came to my restaurant like, you don't have no food, you don't meet me here, you don't know meet me here. And we didn't like each other in high school anyway. I said, oh, all right, I got something for you. So she sat out, honey, and I was humming and realized I had burnt it. I really didn't intentionally burn it. I really didn't. But it burnt. I went, I don't care. I gave that woman that food, and of course she didn't want it because first of all, we had no meat in it. Then I burnt it, and then she told me, this place ain't got no meat. See that? Don't taste like much. And of course I felt so bad. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You have lost your mind. You know, and it didn't do nothing. And I remember that like it was yesterday, and I hated it. I've never seen it again because I would apologize. But I feel that the soul food is straight from the heart, straight from the soul. And you have to really think about it. You don't cook when you're angry. If you're really upset, you need to sit down and wish yourself, say, oh Lord, I gotta get up and go cook this. Get yourself together. You know, if you're fussing with your man or your children, so you have to turn the pot on. Wait, okay, because we can't go no further. And we put it back on after we start fussing. So soul, I think that's one element we have lost. That it comes from the vibration in the heart and the love that you are preparing the food for the people that you are preparing for. Because I truly believe, if I cook for you, you eat for me, you mine.
Anything you'd like to add, my sister? Okay, some interesting comments. But you have questions too. Anyone questions? So everyone's gotten everything they needed here tonight. Questions, comments? Okay.
I want to ask Amina, would you share one of your favorite recipes? Because in the film,
She'd have to kill you if she did.
well, that you would like people who are looking at being more vegetarian, that would help them. Because I remember in the film, the guy was saying, "Oh, this morning I had broccoli and cauliflower and whatever." I said, "Oh my God, what could you do with broccoli and cauliflower together for breakfast?" So there are a couple of things that you could share with us that we could try.
Hello? It's good? Okay. First of all, one of my favorite, I think, because at the time back in the 80s and 70s, was eating a lot of tofu and soy. And did you know that Louisiana is the #1 soy producing state in the United States? And half of that soy goes to our animals, and we could be eating it. And when I lived in Miami, I was lucky enough to be by the tofu factory. We used to go get what they call the waste. It was warm, steel. But anyway, favorite recipe. My tofu fried chicken that I created, and it's really not fried, it's baked. I take tofu, and everybody knows if you freeze tofu, extra tofu, put it in, squeeze the water out of it, put it in the freezer, you change the biochemical structure of the tofu, let it sit overnight, unthaw it out, it's spongy, it will absorb anything you want to do. You take some peanut butter, tahinis, lemon juice, or anything else that you have, some soy sauce, let it soak, so the tofu has a flavor. You can go to the Oriental restaurant, and it's called an Ashé. It's called a tofu pouch. When I first saw it, I said, wow, it looks like chicken. So you get it looks like what it is. It's a thin layer of tofu that you drop in some oil, and it prickles up. And it's brown, so it looks like skin. You come on, you open that up, it's in a pocket. You take your tofu that you've been marinated, stuck it in there, put your toothpick on it, and put it in the oven, let it bake, crispy on the outside, and you take the tofu on the inside. See, vegetation gumbo, make your regular gumbo, just don't put any animals in it, all the seaweed that you want, try it. When you buy seaweed, it's automatically hydrated. So when you bring it home and put it in some water, it feels like you just came out the sea and pulled it out. Because it smells, the salt, the natural salt from the sea, is one of the most fantastic things you can ever take. And liver flavored tofu with grits and gravy in the morning. You take the tofu, your mushrooms, your onions, your bell pepper, you salt in, you throw your tofu in there, you make you a roux, you get you some gravy, and you make your gravy and throw your tofu in there with some grits.
One of the things that you might want to know is that the Center for Ethical Living and Social Justice Renewal is doing a food justice luncheon monthly. monthly, and Amina is the cook. So you want to taste her food, you want to get her recipes, and support a very, very important effort in the city. And we'll have information about when the next one is for you before you leave. I just got to check to find out when that is, okay? So Amina, you tell us that? Somebody else have a recipe they want to share or another question? I think that's all.
My daddy is from the country, and he had a vegetable garden wherever we live. And I've tried it in recent years, but like this past spring was really, really, really hot. Ground was dry, never could grow anything. So do any of you all have suggestions for how to make, I guess, the soil produce?
I'll take a stab. One of the things that we deal with in the city is heavy lead content. So when we came back, there was a lot of testing done. We started off doing raised bed gardens and pots. One of the things that I worked on in my own house was edible landscaping. So looking at how I could make my space beautiful, but also something that I could use. So just lining literally pots up to my steps with kale or chard or herbs, and that way I got a chance to control the soil and know exactly where it was coming from. But the other main thing was composting and us building soil. So there are a bunch of different organizations in the city that are doing that kind of work. New Orleans Food Farm Network is one of them. They actually do soil building. They give soil out. But they also have several people on staff who are sort of dirt experts. But it is really important. At one point, when we talked about soul food, Byron and I talked about the fact that the actual food that we eat today, even if it was prepared the exact same way that it was 40 or 50 years ago, is completely different because the food is different. It doesn't have the same nutrient content. So us being aware of that, you being aware of that is actually a really great step as a gardener or someone who wants to grow their own food. And what I would say is start small. You can start with composting literally in your home. You can you can do it by basically learning the basic recipe for green to brown ratio, and then you can literally put that directly into your soil. And luckily enough, you have sisters making the change, and quite frequently they'll have people that will come in and actually teach those kind of things. And I don't know if you were one of the people who came to the lab where we actually did some planting and saw compost. I didn't come to the lab, but you saw that one of them. Yeah, but I can't stress the importance of soil building and us really understanding that as it's the very first component of sort of food. And then our seeds, where are we getting our seeds? Are they heirloom seeds? Are they reproduce? Because that's another level of us being sustainable, not having to go and buy seeds, but learning really about the whole plant life cycle of growing. What's the name of the place? The one that I think New Orleans Food Farm Network.
Gia, how do you feel about LSU Ag Center also?
LSU Ag Center, yes. There's a list, and I would say on our website we actually have been doing a lot more food policy work. We've been being pushed into that arena, but we just recently produced a book for parents, school food policy. But there are a ton of resources in the back of that book. That's downloadable PDF on Gris Gris Lab's website. It's just the GrisGrisLab.com. Any parent can download the book for free, and it's just a compilation of a bunch of different resources and policy-based work that's happening in the city.
Okay. One question here.
Really, I just wanted to get some contact information from you guys. I already have yours, Gia. I've been working along with my siblings, taking charge of my father's health, and I actually brought him out here tonight, so I'm so happy he got to see this. I don't know how he's taking it all in, but definitely want to get some recipes and things from him.
And as you're coming over, we want to invite you. Ashé has many series of food and health-oriented wellness luncheons once a month, last Thursday of the month. This time it will be on the 24th, not the 31st. Noon to 1:30. They're open and free to the public. And we discuss wellness topics, so we invite you to come out. I'll tell you some more in just a minute.
Firstly, I work for Habitat for Humanity, and we actually have a program where we lease out our empty lots for a year for, it might be $1, it might be $10, somewhere under $10 for a year. And people are using them to garden, so if you're interested, you can ask me about that, and I can get you my friend's number. Otherwise, I was actually just curious to know, as far as food deserts go, I live in an area that just has nothing, and I'm really curious about when corporations are approached and just questions about that, what they have to say, because, I mean, you think, well, you have any number of neighborhoods, how many thousands of people that you could be reaching, why are they not putting things there?
I would have to say it's all based on economics. So you look at where are your most profitable areas, where you have areas where you're in, where your product can be actually the most profitable. And if it's not going to be an area where either they live close to that area or they find a need for it to be there, you really have to have, I think, an internal drive to want to run a business in certain areas. And so the people in certain neighborhoods can't pick them up themselves, or they're not given the opportunity or the access or the resources or the ability to do that themselves. And so you're relying on the people that own the means of production and the means of the industrialization of the food company, which don't typically tend to be the people that are living in these low-income neighborhoods. And so it's basically making that choice and that's part of the problem with capitalism, but I won't go there, of being able to put businesses where you want to. And if the business doesn't want to go there, they don't have to go there, and they don't really have to own that up to anyone because it's in their hands. So kind of an uphill battle that you fight against the food deserts. But as long as you keep the conversation going and you keep it in people's minds and you keep people actually looking at the problem and trying to make it better, then I mean that's that grassroots step that you can take to go against that.
I'll just add just on the policy end, because I feel like I was kind of pushed into that world, kicking and screaming. There are groups, representatives from a lot of the nonprofit world that are really working to influence city policy in terms of zoning and advocacy. And so what we're finding is that we're not even necessarily finding food deserts, but more food swamps, where you have corner stores that just sell a bunch of processed food, right? So some of it is, how do we begin to work with the owners of what's already there to get them to start providing different choices? So there's work being done in those areas. It's just very slow when we think about our city and the priorities that fall in our city. So a lot of that work is having to be driven by individual groups, grassroots efforts, and the people. It's not at the top of our city's priorities when crime is so high, right? So there's a bit of like kind of give and take there where we're having to like push those things through and say, hey, maybe there's a correlation between behavior and what people are eating. Maybe,
Hi, I know I'm short, so I'm trying to. I wanted to ask a question. I was a vegetarian about 5 years ago, and I was vegetarian for 3 years. And after 3 years of no McDonald's, of course, I fell off and got a Big Mac, and that was over after that. Okay, but my New Year's resolution was to go back to my vegetarian diet. My problem is my mother passed away from breast cancer in January of last year, and I also went through breast cancer. So because of that, I wanted to ask a question about the controversy that's going on with soy and breast cancer, my concern is I don't want the breast cancer to come back. So I just wondering, what is your take on that? Do you think that a meat diet, you know, would kind of give you more of a chance of cancer than soy, or, you know, what do you think?
I totally agree with you. From what I expected, what I've over the last 40-something years, when I was younger, I did soy. I understand now that I'm older, I don't need the estrogen that I need. You look at Oriental and Asian women, they don't even know what breast cancer is. And they live on soy. So I think it's a cultural thing, an heredity thing. I think younger women can profit from soy because they still are producing a lot of estrogen and health. Older women, I don't personally do as much. I do almond milk now. I mean, I'll eat it now and then, but I'm not like I used to with, you know, a lot of my diet. But I think as far as any cancer is concerned, I would definitely start raw and go from there. You know, I'd rather go like I did when I decided to turn the change. I just went all the way. And then you can work back up into those things. But I would definitely make my diet as much as raw as possible.
You know, one of the other things when we're looking at those cancers, exercise. Exercise plays a factor. You know, getting that 30 minutes a day in, and you don't have to do it all at once. 10 minutes when you wake up in the morning before you brush your teeth. 15 minutes at lunchtime. You can do 5 at night. Get your 30 minutes a day. Of course, it's better to do it in a concentrated space. But exercise plays a strong role in fighting cancers. And we have to know our risk factors. So if you know your risk factor, then you have to channel your eating. We all can't eat the same thing.
I wanted to give you the date so you can learn more from Chef Amina at the lunches. The next one will be February 8th. It's a Friday. They're usually on Wednesdays at noon, but that would have been Ash Wednesday, and we thought maybe we'd go the Friday before. So February 8th at 5212 Claiborne Avenue, the corner of Jefferson and Claiborne. Amina Dada will be giving so much wisdom to the world. At noon. At noon.
And there is a donation. It's suggested donations between $5 and $8. But you know they'll feed you if you come, but support. Work your ducks.
Hi, my name is Sherilyn Tompkins, and I wanted to add a comment. I'm known for a blog newsletter that I do here called Fabiola. I've been out of town for 2 years taking care of my family. My father, who did pass away of cancer, had diabetes, heart disease before that. My mother, who's also going through cancer at the time. My grandmother, who then just passed away a year ago of cancer. I do eco-conscious living and teach people about this. Before the comment that I made, I do want to, the young lady that talked about soy. I'm an advocate against soy, especially in this country. Monsanto is the #1 producer of it in the world, but especially in this country. Other countries won't touch it, which is why she was making a comment about Asian women. They don't have the issue that we're dealing with here. Don't eat the meat, they're feeding it to the animals. That's what gets them really fat really quickly. That's what causes disease within them. That's what's causing it within us. So it's more than just estrogen. It's thyroid issues. I have people dealing with eczema, psoriasis, a number of issues related to soy. I moved on to the raw food movement. When I got off the soy, became vegan and raw. It's helped me out tremendously. So, and I'm 41 now, so I have so many people go, why do you look like you're 25? Because I eat raw. So, but the comment I also want to make, because I do media, is to talk about also not just the community, but the media's responsibility of what they're pushing on you. And if you have a company or corporation that continues to blanket you with ads about foods that are conditioning you to think that you should still be eating these foods, heavily processed foods, and turning away from the freshness that's here, what we can do to take care of ourselves, they're basically telling you that you're not good enough to take care of you. And that is the biggest lie that we've been told. That is the mentality that has to be turned around. So as long as you continue to recognize that you have every ability to turn your health around, and just like in Byron's film, He touched on the fact that his father didn't believe that, neither did mine. My dad went to, in high school, he was the president of the 4-H club, but then he went into the Navy. It became, we talk about the food deserts, but it became a disease of affluence. They then had more money, they then stopped taking care of themselves. This had actually not a price line. This has to do with what we're feeding ourselves, and we need to feed ourselves more love, as we do within our community, and that's every community, because it's affecting every community. So I just wanted to add that.
If we want to follow you, I understand you have a blog. How do we follow you?
Fabunola.com, FABUNOLA.com. I like to promote the positive side of New Orleans fabulously.
And you'll be around after if anyone has questions or wants to get their information. Questions, comments, who's next? Okay, well let's give our panelists. But one thing I'd like, because it's all about change. You're here for a reason. You came seeking. What are you going to lead with? And I'd like to challenge each of us, 1 week, write down every morsel of food you put in your mouth. 1 week. It's between you and you. You don't have to share it with anyone. Do it in the dark or do it in the bathroom. But every morsel, and it's about you, so make it honest. I ate 4 brownies. The big ones. Say it to yourself. And then at the end of that, we go back and look at it. Look at it. And then decide of what couldn't have, shouldn't have, can you really give up or change. Every change makes a difference. So I challenge each of us to make a change. And I'd like to give the last word to our panelists if they have something else to say.
I'm just really thankful to be out here tonight. I'm liking getting into keeping this going. Food, I think, is one thing that almost everybody has in common, I think, next to breathing. So, it's just keeping it healthy and keeping everybody alive and keeping everybody functioning, smiling, and looking at it. Our markets are Saturday, tomorrow, 10 to 2, 3819 St. Claude Avenue, the yard of Arise Academy. It's open every Saturday. Come get your veggies, come get your basil, come see our students, come listen to some good music. It's a nice feel. And it'll be a beautiful day tomorrow, so there are no excuses.
I would encourage us all to learn about New Orleans' cultural, agricultural history here. It is rich and deep, and we have so many resources right around us, people who really do understand the land and work it every day. And a lot of times they go unnoticed because they're not necessarily attached to an organization, but talk to elders. When I first came back, it was really interviewing my grandmother at 95, who kept her spices in her apron and understood that really they supplemented with the corner store for rice. They grew everything that they ate right in their backyards and shared, and that was something that I could claim was a part of my legacy. So I didn't have to think about changing my diet as something that was outside of myself. It was really about reclaiming myself, and that's something that I've shared with my sons. And they now in school are the kids who will actually say, I want water, or I brought seaweed as a snack, or I'm going to share some cashew butter and some apples with the rest of the class, just naturally, because their palates haven't been tainted in the same way. And they've experienced, variety of food, but they are learning to make choices for themselves and to really reflect on how their bodies feel. And so that's really, for me, very important. How do you feel when you're eating certain things? Do you really feel happy, or do you feel sluggish afterwards? Do you feel high vibration and energy? And that's something that, again, we can constantly reflect on when we think about the fact that greens and peppers and all the things that actually make our bodies healthy are a part of of being a person of color in New Orleans, that we don't have to go outside of ourselves to get that.
I'm just more direct. I guess I'm just old school. I am so sick and tired of people talking about, I don't know how to do better. I don't know how to do better. What can I do? God darn it, if I give you a Coke and an apple and ask you which one is the most nutritious, if you don't know, you don't know. You need to be sick. All right? I'm sick of it. You know what to eat. Nobody don't have to tell y'all nothing. I really am. I am so tired of that. And when I decided to come home, and that was a big decision to leave nice California and send it and come back to this plantation. I did it because of y'all. I wanted the people. I wanted my people to realize they could eat better. My personal mission for the restaurant, for my life, has always been, if you eat better, you think better, you act better. Put that on my gravestone here, because I have lived with that for the last 40 years. And the last thing I want to know, ask any of those murderers, crime people, when the last time they had a good hot meal? People don't commit crimes when they're belly full. They go sit down somewhere. Take it easy. Go and ask the last person that killed somebody and killed all those children and all these crazy killings. Ask them that child had a good hot meal or a good bowel movement, either one. You know? Because all that's toxin. I mean, simple stuff. Y'all know what to eat. Come on now. If Coca-Cola can take rust off a battery, why the heck you put it in you? If you had a brand new car that was the baddest car in the world, look, I'm an old Dick Reagan person, all right? I was blessed enough to be around Dick for one whole week, 1977. And that changed my life, totally. He didn't have no gray hair. You know, I was in California, and we did a workshop with him for 3 days. And it changed my life. So you have to just, if you want to do it, I still that, well, we have to try and get them to understand. Forget all that. You know what you got to do. You know how sick your people in your family. You done been holding your friend head in the toilet while she's throwing up from the chemo. You know that. But I can't stop eating my chicken. Well, go on, eat your chicken, honey. Because I'm holding your head right over this stove. Right over this toilet. Because you're going to be throwing up behind it. You don't know what to do, so just do it. All right? All right. Come see me at my show.
I just want to say to you, Ashé has a number of things coming up this weekend that we'd love to see you all come back to. On Sunday, our annual program celebrating the legacy of the Civil Rights Movement and Dr. Martin Luther King will be here at 5 p.m. Lift every voice and sing. The uplifting songs of the Civil Rights Movement, and it is communal singing. Yes, I sing in my P-flat voice. So you can sing to yours. So come on out. On Monday, we will have an inauguration screening that will go on all day long. Celebrate with family, come on out, see our POTUS as he takes the oath again, and I understand he's using Martin Luther King's Bible and Abraham Lincoln's Bible to be sworn in with. So come on out and share with us on Monday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sisters Making a Change, you've heard a lot about it. Free exercise, health, and wellness classes every Monday and Thursday from 6 to 8. Join us. We have a mailing list. You'll find out all about what's going on. Don't leave without signing up for our mailing list. We are excited that you're here tonight. Talk amongst yourself for about 3 minutes.